Hello and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart. Well, what a week. I can hardly believe the pace of developments. We've just had a statement from the White House where they've, for the first time, given a definitive statement on the drones, the mystery objects that have been buzzing the skies of not only New Jersey, but pretty much the entire east coast of the USA, the entire continent, and much of the planet. But if you believe the White House, it's all explainable. And apparently it was authorized. These were drones that were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Let's take a quick listen to the statement from the White House earlier today.
Before I turn to questions, I do have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office. From President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy. A statement from the President of the United States to start this briefing with some news.
Okay, you've heard that statement from the White House. I now want to give you the opportunity to rehear what was said by the Defense Department back in December. There are two statements that were made by the Defense Department on both the 11th and the 17th of December. So here we go.
Thanks, General Ryder. So back to the drones. Can you unequivocally say that none of the drones that are being spotted are DoD assets or something that's being tested within the Defense Department? Are all of these either civilian or otherwise, but just not Department of Defense drones?
You're talking about the drones in New Jersey up and down the... Yes, they are not DoD assets.
None of them are?
To my knowledge, none of them are.
Okay. And are there any sort of experimental programs going on where maybe drones are being tested that...
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. What about the ones that are flying over military bases at this point? Have there been any possibilities of collecting what sort of information these drones are doing or anything like that?
Yeah, again, just to kind of put this into context, and I know that our colleagues at the White House, FAA, DHS, FBI have all made this point. There's over 1 million drones registered in the United States, and on any given day, approximately 8,500 drones are, in flight. And so the vast majority of these drones are going to probably be recreational or hobbyist. They're going to be commercial drones, used in things like architecture, engineering, farming, or they could be used for law enforcement. Is it possible that some of those drones could be up to malign activity? It's entirely possible, but the vast majority, that is not, the case. And in the case of drones flying near or over U.S. military installations, that in and of itself, just given the volume of drone flights we see on a given day, is not something that's new. We take all of those seriously. We will typically, when we detect them, attempt to classify them and take appropriate measures. Is it possible that some of those are surveilling? Absolutely. But can you make that assumption in every case? Not necessarily. So in each case, commanders have the authority, installation commanders and authorities have the authority to respond appropriately, and will continue to do that.
Can you rule out that these are American drones or U.S. military drones?
These are not U.S. military drones. Again, this is being investigated by local law enforcement. What our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
Representative Jeff Van Drew, who is a Republican from New Jersey, was just on the air saying that Iran launched a mothership probably about a month ago that contains these drones, and that mothership is off the coast of the east coast of the United States. Is there any truth to that?
There is not any truth to that. There is no Iranian ship off the coast of the United States, and there's no so-called mothership launching drones towards the United States.
Now, in my book, It's absolutely clear that the statements made by the Pentagon in December categorically contradict what has been said today by the White House. There's an old saying in my line of work that the cover-up is often worse than the actual conspiracy. And in this case, you really have to question what on earth is going on. I've been talking to people in New Jersey, New York, Long Island for a long time now, and whatever these visitors are, they've been around since Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they're the guests that never left. I'd like to now bring in the mayor of Belleville Township in New Jersey, Mayor Michael Melham. So, Mr. Mayor, you've seen those quotes from the White House and then the Pentagon. They do appear to contradict each other. What's your take on what's going on, and what's your view on the drones crisis?
I mean, it's disappointing. You know, here on the ground as mayors, there are 500 mayors strong here in New Jersey. We are the closest to the ground. The people are coming to us for answers. And sadly, our federal government is failing us. Our state government is failing us. I mean, come on, just listen to that most recent statement. We've been waiting now, 8 days for disclosure on this matter. And we're told that the drones that were flying, past tense, were flying. Last night, there were multiple drones over my house. So I don't know what they're talking about when they say were flying, and then they're flying for other various reasons. What could the other various reasons be? We have miles and acreage in the Midwest where you could fly anything you want experimentally and test and do your research there. Why are they flying over northern New Jersey, right dead smack in the middle of our airspace? We still have more questions than answers. And unfortunately, this is sad, and this is not the disclosure that myself and many others were looking for.
I have to admit, it is an amazing disappointment to see a president who has campaigned so strongly on his willingness to confront what he calls the deep state. And he appears to be so supinely rolling over and willing to accept and acquiesce to the wishes of the national security state on this issue. Frankly, I'll say it, I don't think the explanation from the White House washes. It contradicts categorical denials from the Pentagon that these were any kind of Defense Department or military drone, or indeed any kind of experimental research. If in fact in December the Defense Department was telling the truth, the implication is that the Defense Department itself was being misled. Can you think of any explanation that fits into the account given now by the White House that these were authorized drones, authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons? Can you tell us what you were told by the FAA and the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security?
Yeah, I mean, listen, point blank, Homeland Security said it's not us. The federal government told us point blank, these are not federal operations. Those two things were told to us point blank in a mayor's only briefing here in New Jersey, whereby our state of New Jersey, our own governor, couldn't get answers from the then Biden administration. I mean, come on, the Biden administration couldn't tell our governor, wink, wink, these are us, we're doing research, these are our drones. Come on. I mean, we're not accepting this anymore. And then we were on a mayor's only White House briefing where we were told, you're seeing things. There's nothing to see out there. We don't have not one credible threat of a report in the sky. Then the very next day, they actually convened a House Intelligence Committee, had a classified briefing that lasted 3.5 hours. Well, what did they talk about for 3.5 hours if, one, there's nothing to see here, or two, if our AAA is saying, oh yeah, by the way, what, they forgot to tell us that those were our drones, that they have clearance and they have licenses to fly? The FAA was telling us here in New Jersey when they issued a ban in 26 different municipalities, which was then extended. By the way, it's no longer active. But they were telling us if they see a drone in the sky, they may take lethal action. Come on. Why didn't they just tell us from the very beginning that it was theirs? I mean, I'm not buying it. I'm still waiting for that disclosure. I mean, sadly, I've been waiting for about 8 days. I didn't expect much from the Biden administration. I do still hold out faith and hope that we will hear something better from the Trump administration. He's been all over this topic. He's been quoted multiple times, even going on the record as to say, oh, the government knows who they are, the president knows who they are. Now, 8-9 days into his administration, we're being told. I mean, really, it actually sounds like a cover story to cover the fact they didn't have a cover story.
I think that's the thing that's most concerning, is the possibility that the government is genuinely flummoxed, which frankly is what I've been being told by my sources. I've been being told by people in the FBI, the FAA and the DHS and the Defence Department that nobody has any idea what these objects are, and indeed it has been reported in the media, I think last week, that the FBI had admitted that they were not able to trace the source of these drones, and nor were they able to find out who was responsible for them. Now we have this totally contradictory statement from the White House, which appears to be an effort to shut this whole issue down. Now, sir, we do live in a different era from the 1940s, where governments could explain things away as weather balloons. Do you think the people of New Jersey will buy this White House explanation?
I can tell you that this mayor is not buying it. And I can tell you there's a bunch of other local elected officials that are not buying it. But you're on to something. You know, we do live in a sad reality of people's attention spans are only a few minutes long. I mean, a month ago, people were all over this. A couple of weeks ago, when this got brought back to the surface by people like me and others going on social media and keep ringing that alarm, you know, people were still interested. I have to say, it's waning. You know, people are less concerned and less curious, and potentially that's part. Potentially this is a whole experiment to find out how long a people's attention spans are going to be. And I think they're finding out that sadly, people are no longer asking questions. Thankfully, I have a pulpit, and thankfully, I have a mechanism in a media format to be able to ask those questions and hopefully demand some answers. But you're right, we are getting competing information. I mean, the federal government initially was telling us nothing to see here. Then you had one congressperson saying that it was an Iranian mothership off the coast of our shore. Then you had another, I think it was the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, say it was China. So all this competing information, I mean, all it does is fuel conspiracy theories. So truth and transparency is gonna tell the truth. We're waiting for that. I'm hoping, and I'm still crossing my fingers, we're gonna get some disclosure. We deserve more answers. Drones were flying over my house last night. That's unacceptable here in northern New Jersey.
Now, just one thing I want to remind the public about is that in mid-December, when this was all in full blossom, when everybody was getting very wound up about these drones, there was a statement issued by the FAA, the DHS, the Department of Defense, and the FBI, where they made a categorical statement that these were simple misidentifications of known aircraft, and that in fact there was no suggestion in that statement that there was any kind of authorized drone flyover authorized by the FAA. Do you agree that that statement appears to directly contradict what the White House has said today?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. I mean, why do a temporary ban over 20-something municipalities here if you know exactly what's going on? And why not just say it? I mean, the fact they're telling us they were flying and various other reasons. I mean, I've been saying for a long time, we're no longer questioning who's doing it. I had believed that these were government assets from the very beginning. Unfortunately, we don't know why. Why are they flying over urban spaces like here in northern New Jersey, densely populated areas? We have plenty of places they could do training exercise, plenty of places they could do research. What is it they're looking, or dare I say, sniffing for?
The other concern is that there have been military bases closed down, not just over New Jersey, but across the continental United States. The Picatinny Arsenal over New Jersey, there were so many overflights over there that the commander confirmed that there were 11 illegal incursions that were directly over the base. By any definition, they were gross incursions that posed a national security threat. Does the assurance now from the White House that these were authorized drones put your concerns to rest, sir? I know they don't, but I just want to hear it from you.
No, they don't. As I said before, it sounds like a cover story to cover for the fact they had no cover story. I mean, keep in mind, it wasn't widely reported, but a couple weeks ago, there was a Chinese national in California who was caught trying to board a plane en route to China with a drone that had been flown over one of our military bases. So clearly, there are bad actors at play here. Clearly, in my opinion, there are some good actors at play. Potentially that we put drones up as a counter surveillance measure. Potentially we put them up for our own eyes and ears up there. But just tell us that's what's happening. to tell us first that we're seeing things. You know how insulting it was to the residents of New Jersey to be told you guys are seeing things, it's all misidentification. And now to be told, oh yeah, by the way, the FAA did permit these things. I mean, come on, we're not buying the story anymore. They have to do better.
Well, Mayor Michael Melham, I thank you so much for coming on so quickly. And I somehow think, knowing the people of New Jersey, they're not going to take this sitting down and just cop it. I suspect that if these drone incursions do continue, and as you say, they haven't actually abated at all. The other misleading thing I think that was being said was that these drones ever went away. They never went away. If they continue, it's going to be very interesting to see how the government wriggles its way out of this one. Mayor Michael Melham, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to bring in evidence that suggests that the drone incursions, so-called, are not happening just over the east coast of America or the west coast. They're happening all over the continental USA, as well as, frankly, the United Kingdom, Western Europe, Japan, Russia, China. And today, I'm bringing you a local police chief from a little town of 2,112 people called Ourada in Nebraska, in Valley County, Nebraska. Chris Grooms was the police chief in Ourada until December, and he's got some very interesting accounts from local residents of a spate of drone sightings that took place around 2019-2020. Chris, welcome to Reality Check. Good to have you here. What were and are local residents seeing in the Ourada city area?
Well, to this day, they're still popping up here and there. Deputy that still works with the Valley County Sheriff's Office, just as recent as December 2024, had filmed some pretty odd stuff. Back in 2019, 2020 is when they were very active here in the Valley County, Ourada area. And even to the west of us, about 100 miles, there was some counties that were also seeing the same stuff on the same nights at the same time as we were. So clearly it wasn't just a bunch of hobbyist kids or people out flying their drones. These were large drones. They were small ones. They were bright lights in the sky. They were orbs at times. It was madness for about 17 days.
So it was a very specific period of time. It was what, over 17 days, you say?
Yep, approximately 17 days. Yep, about December, I think 24th to about the 21st of January.
So that was from September 2019 through to January 2020.
December 24th of 2019 to about January 2021 of 2020.
Right. And the thing that really strikes me, reading some of those reports that you've got from locals that you've very kindly shared with us, in some cases, people were seeing anything between 6 to 25 objects at a time.
Yep. Even here in Valley County, there's a town southwest of Ourada that's still in Valley County called Arcadia. And one of the nights, a couple of the off-duty officers, to include an off-duty state trooper and an on-duty deputy with Valley County, including the sheriff, they witnessed anywhere between 40 and 50 essentially surrounding the town.
40
Yep.
and 50. And these are they large drones, these, or is there a variation in the different types of drones?
I think mostly that night they were of a smaller version. But some nights they were very large. Some of the larger ones seemed to hang out by themselves. But then in a different location, maybe 20 miles away, 15 miles away, there'd be some smaller ones. But that night there was 40 to 50 that were counted by the sheriff, the deputy, an off-duty deputy, and the state trooper.
Now, as I recall it, Chris, way back in around about 2014, 2015, there was a huge spate of sightings of alleged drones over the Midwest, over Nebraska, Dakota, North and South Dakota, and it was never explained. It went right across to Colorado. And there was a series of sightings by police, the FBI were involved, local TV got video of it, and there were never any answers. Is it possible, I'm just devil's advocating here and searching for an answer, is it possible that because locals knew about those earlier sightings, these people are misguided, that they're misdirecting themselves, that they're looking at prosaic objects like aircraft or objects like stars or satellites and misidentifying them? You know, sometimes we're very suggestible as humans. Could it be that, do you think?
Well, obviously some of those calls did happen, but we would do our due diligence and investigate into it. And a lot of that did happen in other counties, but there was times where you had multiple witnesses, you had deputies, sheriffs, police officers witnessing things with their own eyes. And these things weren't 30,000 feet up. They weren't in space. They were at 60 feet, 100 feet. They were right there. And, oh, go ahead, Ross.
No, I was going to ask, and what exactly were people saying that they were seeing, including some of your deputies?
It varied. My personal experience on a call, I saw a large, bright orange red light in the sky at about 100 to 150 feet. And it had moved roughly 3/4 of a mile away. It was away from me and had moved directly in front of me 3/4 of a mile in about 2 to 4 seconds. And wow. It was at about 100 feet. It made no noise whatsoever. And I tried to pursue it as it continued to head south out of our county. And I couldn't catch it. I never really got a good look at it. I couldn't tell if there was wings or a tail or anything because it was just so bright. It was just a big bright light.
If an object moves in 2 or 3 seconds, 3/4 of a mile, that's an extraordinary rate of acceleration, isn't it?
Yeah. So I talked to some pretty intelligent people with the UAP Disclosure Fund, some super awesome, intelligent guys. And they've pretty much estimated that this thing could have been moving anywhere between 350 to 750 miles an hour, if not even faster.
Now, unless you've got a jet turbine-powered drone with the kind of jets that sit on a 737 or a 747, there is absolutely no way a conventional drone can move that fast, is there?
Not in my experience, and I spent 11 years almost active duty in the military around jets, helicopters, C-130s, C-17s, Predator drones, and even when those things are at 20,000 feet flying above you, you can still hear them. And this thing made no noise. The one thing I will add that I found to be a little odd was that it had contrails behind it as it whizzed by me. And I could never figure out what that was. I've talked to a few people that kind of gave me an idea of maybe what that reasoning was. But the other thing that was concerning was as I tried to pursue it, and it continued out of my county. I came to a bridge that goes over the North Loop River, and it kind of opens up into a big area that gives me a better line of sight. And I got out of my truck to try and climb onto my hood to see if I could see it, and it was gone. It either shut the light off or it just flew over the horizon so fast that I couldn't make out what it was or get a better eye view of it. I had a couple people that witnessed it. There was actually some locals that are on the volunteer fire department that come and met me on the bridge. And I pretty much said, please tell me you saw that. And they giggled and said, oh yeah, we saw it. So it was pretty intense. And the other thing about that was the reason I went to that call was there was 11 to 15 smaller drones flying over a smaller town outside of my county. They don't have a very good law enforcement presence there. So I was asked to go help. And people were calling in that these 11 to 15 things in the sky were surrounding the town. So when I went to go that way, that's when this other big giant thing flew just right by me and continued south. And as I continued to go into this small little town, whatever those little ones were, they disappeared when the big one left.
What was the shape of the big one? Did it look like a craft or did it look more like an orb?
Yeah, it looked essentially like an orb, a big bright light in the sky, and it was moving. It was moving so fast. It still blows my mind to this day.
So when you say fast, I mean, you'd be familiar with the term the five observables, the things that are used to describe anomalous objects: instantaneous velocity, hypersonic velocity, extreme speeds, transmedium, going from sea to water, water to air, atmosphere into space, stealth, and of course, positive lift with no visible means of propulsion. Do any of the objects that you've seen or that your deputy's seen conform to those five observables, you believe?
I'd say a lot of the time that instantaneous acceleration was going on. Just they'd be hovering for. I mean, these things were around every night for 3, 4, 5 hours, just moving around, doing weird stuff around little towns, and yeah, they'd zip away. And a ton of the witnesses that we interviewed or we talked to all said the same thing, that when these things would fly off at extreme rates of speed, they never made sounds. They never made sounds that a quadcopter drone would make. They would take off.
There you've got instantaneous acceleration or hypersonic, high speeds at least, and you've also got no visible means of propulsion. You're not hearing a jet turbine. You're not seeing or hearing a propeller.
Yep. And just like that night that I saw that large one fly by me, talking to those UAP Disclosure Fund guys, they had mentioned there could have been possibly a sonic boom if it had reached the speed that they threw in there and estimated. And there was no sonic boom. There was the contrails, but there was no sonic boom. It was just complete silence.
So what's motivated you to speak up publicly on this, Chris, as I understand it, is you've looked at the videos and the photographs of what's being recorded in both New Jersey and in other parts of the United States. And what you saw and your colleagues saw back in 2019, 2020, is it identical or similar to what they're now seeing and now recording?
Yeah, it's very similar. It's around, I mean, this could be all anecdotal, but it's around the same time frame, that December or January, the possible sightings of SUV-sized drones, the orbs, the lights in the sky, doing things that make no sense. It's all very similar to what we were seeing back in 2019, 2020.
What do you think it is?
Oh, when I first saw that stuff, I questioned a lot of, what was I seeing? Could it have been us? Could it have been a foreign adversary? But then immediately I threw out the foreign adversary thing. This middle of nowhere, Nebraska, if you're a foreign adversary coming out of a submarine out in the ocean and you're flying back to a submarine every night to the east or west coast, how are you refueling? Where are you re-energizing? Whatever you want to talk about when it comes to battery operated or whatever. It wasn't foreign adversary. It just wasn't.
The other thing I thought was really well done by you and your deputies was a couple of them, when they were making the reports, they made the note that they'd looked on Flight Tracker to see if there were any registered aircraft transmitting on a transponder in the area. And they were able to exclude the possibility that these were known aircraft. Was that a common feature, that your officers were basically trying to rule out prosaic explanations?
Yeah. And another thing is, we do have flyover jets going from big cities. That's obvious. And that happens from sun up to sundown. But those things are at 30,000, 40,000, 25,000. So you know that that's a jet flying over you. These things were at 60 feet. They were at 50 feet, 100 feet. They were right there. They weren't high up in the air. But yeah, we used some of the flight tracker data to see if it was potentially a jet, which obviously it never was. We do have your typical National Guard CH-47 Chinooks and your Blackhawks that fly around here and train. But even then, I can tell when a Chinook is 3 miles out. I can just tell I've been around them so much, and I can just tell. But they don't even really fly around towns like these things were doing. They stick out to the rivers. And
I mean, I'm just trying to think of possible explanations. Is it Offutt Air Force Base is about, 190 miles to the west of where you were or where you are. Could it be that these are military operations out of the Offutt Air Force Base?
So Offutt, yep. Offutt's about 3.5 hours east of us. They're to the east of Ford.
Oh, sorry, east, yeah.
Nope, you're fine. Yep. East. They do fly up here once in a while with, the F-22s and stuff like that. But people just know that it's a jet doing flybys. And obviously the noise, you can hear them while they're out doing what they're doing.
It's an amazing mystery, this, Chris, because, of course, there's been the previous sightings over the Midwest that had everybody baffled, that did make national television at the time, and the FBI wasn't able to provide an explanation. And even the government formally denied that it was anything of theirs. We've got the same situation again, where the Defense Department's denying that the drones on the east and west coast have anything at all to do with the Defense Department. Somebody's not telling the truth, are they? I mean, there must be somebody who knows what these objects are.
Yeah, when all this was going on, my sheriff, other law enforcement agencies, we reached out to, everybody, the FBI, Offutt, the local state police, FAA. We reached out to everybody. They were kind. They were polite. They answered our questions as best they could. But none of the answers came from anybody that, oh yeah, that's this, or, oh yeah, that's China or Russia, we never had answers.
Which is intriguing. Have you had anybody say to you that you're not seeing one of the things that's been happening in New Jersey that infuriates the people of New Jersey is they're being told that they're not seeing what they're absolutely adamant they are seeing, and they're sick of being gaslit by government and the relevant agencies. Have you been told that you're not seeing what you're seeing?
Me personally, no. I've never had any government agency or anything like that tell me, oh, you're just seeing planes and helicopters and hobbyist drones. Nobody's ever said anything like that to me, but we've got the cold shoulder. That's for sure.
Now, the thing that really puzzles me about this is you've got a major airbase, which has previously been the subject of UFO sightings very relatively close to you within a few hours' drive. You're a person with extensive military experience. You've worked in the US Army as an infantry squad leader, as in the airborne infantry as a team leader and a squad leader. Whatever you say about this, the fact that there are anomalous objects moving at extraordinary speeds, nobody's accepting responsibility from them, and they're within a few hours of one of the major, I suspect, nuclear-armed military bases in the United States. By any definition, Chris, that's a national security concern, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yep. I've been concerned with this ever since that stuff was happening back in 2019, 2020. Whether it is some type of non-human intelligence or it's a foreign adversary and they're using some high-tech drones, you just look into Ukraine. And even back when I was in the military in 2006 through 2008, in Afghanistan and Iraq, we were using drones, just little squad drones that our squad would fly up in the air and would fly around and do reconnaissance for us. But you just think about out here in Nebraska, we don't have any, where I'm at, we don't have nuclear facilities right around my local area, but we do have ethanol plants, and there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of pounds of chemicals, feed. You have, daily trains coming through with coal and picking up feed and stuff like that. If you just took one of these so-called drones and put 15 pounds of C4 on it and flew it into our ethanol plant, you'd have a major disaster. And I'm not trying to scare people or anything like that, but it's obviously something that we in law enforcement think about.
That's what I find bewildering. We're obviously, the focus very much of this episode is to look at regions other than the ones that have featured prominently in the media, mainly on the East Coast in New Jersey and over New York City, where it's clear these drones have been seen not just in the last few months, but over many years, going back in some cases over a decade. And it's an ongoing mystery, and we never get answers. Government never really provides an answer. Do you think there is? I mean, I'm always intrigued by how governments work, and one of the great lessons I've been taught is always assume a screw up before a conspiracy. Is it possible, you think, that government just doesn't know what these objects are and doesn't want to admit it?
I mean, I can speculate and say maybe that is the reason that they can't say nothing is they don't know. I'm open to any possibilities at this point, just because of the lackadaisical approach from some of the government agencies. I'm not saying that they're doing it on purpose, because maybe they just don't know.
In this case, it looks to me like there's a national security concern, and I'm hearing this from good people like yourself and the police, the FBI, from local government, and indeed from the highest levels of government, and yet nobody seems willing to take control or take charge of it. It's a very curious situation. Chris, thank you so much for joining Reality Check, and I sincerely hope we can get some answers for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Ross. Thank you.
So we recorded that interview with Chris Grooms before, of course, today's White House announcement, which basically suggests that we can all go away and stop worrying about the drones because it was all authorised by the FAA. And I asked Chris in the wake of that announcement what was his response to that. And he's authorised me to use this statement, quote, "It's an absolute lie, especially if you date back to Nebraska in 2019-2020, which of course is 4 or 5 years ago. Valley County is roughly 568 square miles. It has less of a population than 4,500 people. The FAA was not doing research at that time, especially what these so-called drones were doing. They were not hobbyists, not to mention how many counties at one time were reporting the same thing at the same time, with 100 miles between my county, which was Valley County, and Lincoln County. We've been lied to again. I'm not a political guy. I did vote for Trump. At the end of the day, I'm not loyal to a person or a party, especially when they lie to the American people and the world constantly. I'm loyal to the citizens of my country and the Constitution." What an absolute joke, says Chris Grooms. He's obviously very strongly of the view that the current White House statement doesn't explain what he's been seeing and what many people have been seeing, not just in New Jersey or New York, but across the US and indeed around the world for weeks. The mystery continues. Thank you so much for joining this intriguing episode of Reality Check. We'll be digging for answers and we'll be back with more soon. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of NewsNation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.